what percentage that a student has missed. And again, we're back to, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. Other schools and other districts have made progress on this. I definitely believe that we can make great progress on this, but it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all thing. You're really looking at these bands, and these are real numbers here. So I took 10 absences. This is our real data range for our student. One student missed 150 days. So you can see where they fall in the band by the percentage of schools that they missed each year. Okay, and this is like wraparound services for all students that come to school every day, things like a great climate, the relationships that you make with students when they come in the door, reading them, things that you would just do for every kid regardless. And now, as a student approaches, 18, 19, 20 days out, okay, you're developing personal outreach, personal attendance plans, you're doing a guidance, administrator, a parent meeting with the child and things like that. And those we've been doing after 3 days. So these are your tier 2s. And your tier 3s are really your high level intensity kids who have missed 25% of the year, 50% of the year. And why this is important and why I'm showing this slide is things that work down here are not necessarily going to work for these kids. These kids are much more intensive. They're not going to care about things like school-based policies, but down here, school-based policies are effective. And what we're looking at is we're looking at shaving percentages off through a lot of different means, not just taking one chunk off with one giant intervention, but wherever we can shave numbers, including things like as simple as data reporting, as simple as things like medical absences, okay, wherever we can shave and look at those numbers, we're going to do that. Our bottom line is we care what the state says as a district, but much more importantly, we care about our students and that we're doing the best for our students and their well-being. So the state has this interesting kind of loophole, wormhole that Mr. Peach and I talked about. If a student receives online instruction from a certified instructor during the day, they're not considered to be absent. So if a student was out for suspension, if they were out for extended medical reasons, we can curb those numbers by providing them an online tutor. So it's things like this where we're kind of rethinking traditional schooling a little bit, where they have to come in every day and they all have to take their standardized curriculum. By kind of personalizing this a little bit, or thinking outside the box, or providing some online tutoring services somehow, I think we're going to get a big chunk of those numbers down. So these are our reasons. These are our reasons in order of prevalence. So we took that entire list of 130 students and we coded them, and many of the students are cross-coded, but for sake of simplicity, so medical absences is our highest occurrence. Most students on that list are out for medical reasons. Then school refusal and avoidance. Parents have difficulty. Maybe they need help getting their child out of bed in the morning. They don't want to get out of bed super early, get on the bus, things like that. And we've done things like staggered start times for those kids, bringing them in later, doing some intensive tutoring. Huge in our community, family issues in the home life, not being super stable. We've developed some solutions for that, school-based anxiety, the size of the school. So a lot of our students are caregivers for younger siblings, and then a lower prevalence, which is good for us, students that were court involved or discipline-based, suspensions, things like that. And down here, you're going to have things like, I didn't list it, but it was a fairly decent number of things like family vacations during the school year. And again, that's parent education, like working during the allotted times and the allotted breaks to give those students time where you can still have those opportunities with your family, but not miss school. So solutions, and this is nationally, I'm not talking at the local level, but we have to look at things nationally as we bring it back in. Despite the best efforts, chronic absenteeism remains a vexing national problem with no one-size-fits-all solution. Effective solutions are community-based, providing national research, nuanced, and multimodal, so a lot of different approaches. And it is chronic absenteeism, like I said, is a K-12 problem, not just a high school problem. All right. What we developed in the plans, things that we're putting in, so we're going to have 2 tiers. We're going to have the school-based solutions and the community-based solutions, and a lot of those overlap, so you'll have some community-based solutions in partnership with the schools. School climate, we continue to work on school climate. We want the best school climate to be warm and welcoming, and students to come, but that's not going to work for every kid. Part of that is the coursework they take. Part of that is student choice is a giant driver for kids if they have a choice in the classes they take at the high school level and curriculum and being interested. I know your makerspace attendance, the days at makerspace is huge, right? So that drives that on that day, that drives that. I know, and I talked about taco, I think I talked about taco Nacho Friday last time. Like on Friday, you think a lot of high school kids would not come to school, right? They come for the nachos.
Whatever works. If you're eating in school. Whatever works.
Policy discussions, and this is probably the most loaded one of all, but it's important that we don't get hung up just on policies. Policy is effective for a subset of students, and we're looking at shading numbers across the board. Policies, and you can get all into the weeds when we talk about what's a good policy, what's not. We have to be kind of above that work. The policy is going to support the kids that it'll work with in the classroom that's going to have effect. So again, it's going to be those tier 1 and those tier 2s, where your tier 3s not so much, and then you're going to need more personalized school-based things, programming, the online stuff, the working in smaller groups, things like that. This is a huge one. I really believe we can get 5% on that with that online piece. I really believe I can shave 5% if we set that up and figure that out. We do have several online systems, the ESOLs that we use. The conundrum that we have with that is a lot of kids prefer that, so if we open that can of worms, our students stay home because now it's easier. I can just go on my laptop and I can listen to YouTube and I can do this. So I don't know where that sweet spot is. I don't think a lot of people do, but we're still working on it. But I know that they're receiving some instruction rather than no instruction if they were going to stay home anyhow. So we have to find that middle ground. School-based attendance, Mr. Preacher put in the budget for a school-based attendance outreach person in the police department to actually go either on their own or with a school-based official like a counselor or an administrator to do those home visits and say, hey, you didn't come to school today. And that has been effective for us at the high school. It is a lot of man hours, but usually it works for some kids great, for some kids it doesn't work. But it has worked for some kids, so maybe 50%, so we should probably shave a couple percents there. Parents and student meetings and intervention teams, as increased social and emotional support, as we've seen this rise in poverty, we've seen a huge number of kids come to us with just horrific backstories that's getting in the way of A, their learning, and B, their attending school. So we kind of have to work around that and kind of remove those obstacles for those students so that they can be successful. And there's a lot of tools, we did a whole year on it. We still have more work to go. There's things that our faculty are figuring out and collaborating on. There's things that the outside folks can teach us about how to do this. So it really does take this community, and it's not something that we can just do on our own or should do on its own. It's a community issue. And then this has worked for some students as well, but it doesn't work for incentivizing things, right? Slushies, right? The ice cream cones, right? We've done food works very well for some kids. School store vouchers works well for some kids, but again, not for all schools. So we're looking at all these different approaches and pulling numbers. Community-based solutions. Current national solutions have moved away from court-based interventions. Connecticut especially has kind of moved away from any kind of punitive consequence for students missing school. So the old, model of the truancy officer knocking on your door, immediately an outreach person, but they're there to support the families. They're there not as a punitive thing to hand out a ticket to the parents. They're there to say, what can we do as a school district to support you and help you come to school? Increased human service supports for students and their families. This is going to be inside the school and outside the school. You talked about CHR, Scott, a little bit, right? Things like that. Basically, the school Killingly has a DCF substation in the school. So you kind of have this available services, one-stop shopping, where you can get the family in, you can get them the supports they need, or you can refer them to community-based solutions. Increased parent education. This is so important. It is not a good idea to keep your elementary school student home because you want to spend time with them. Once in a while is great, but if you're doing this on a regular basis, it's also so important to teach them that the detrimental effect that missing days in second or third grade will have on their academic trajectory all the way through K-12 and even after that. It's huge. It's additive. 1 week here, 1 week in the third grade just adds up. Fourth grade, boom, 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 all the way through. And that's where we're starting to see the data and the data trends. A regional youth service bureau or attendance bureau. We had the JRBs. My friend Mark Irons was he works for juvenile probation services. Very knowledgeable on the subject. He's also a community member and parent in our student in our school system. Came and spoke. It was probably our best meeting we had all year. Spoke about what was going on about that and gave us their perspective about why the justice system kind of stepped out from this and kind of left it on the school systems. And what he said made a lot of sense. And he said, by having these community-based attendance bureaus where you have a dedicated person that might serve one community or 3 or 4 communities, you can go out and you can provide these services, you can point people in the right places, and outside agencies in the school itself. So that's what we have. I have for you guys, if you want, I have some really in-depth data in crazy slides on all the pieces, and you can see where our patterns are. But I think that's a really good overview of what's going on. And I think the important thing is we stay the course. I'm really happy with the work we did on Adopt this year, because we didn't change the numbers. The numbers are flat. We actually went down 0.4, but when you adjust for the error in the reporting, they're flat numbers. But we stopped the bleeding on what we did. So something we're doing is working there, okay? So the poverty rate, again, is going to be what it's going to be, and how we respond to it is on us to provide the best for our students to do that. Moving forward, I want to see those numbers, our goal next year is below 20, 18, 15. I'd like to see those numbers move in that direction, regardless of what the poverty rate does. I think if we can do that, we'll be doing great work as a team. I'm incredibly thankful to Mr. Nagel and everybody else from this academy that came and gave up their time to work on the Adopt team, and I think we just did some great work this year. This is a problem that we weren't going to solve in 1 year, but I think we've made great progress in terms of the data. I think Mr. Petro's got some solutions and suggestions as well, and I think what he has is great, and will support what we're doing. And when you put all these pieces together, I think we have a pretty solid plan. Sorry if I was a little long-winded. Does anybody have any?
I think it was the third slide, the regression that you showed between the attendance and the poverty rate. I'm assuming with all that data that you've run a lot more thorough regression controlling for the attendance rate.
Yep.
As part of that data, whoever you do end up sharing that with, myself included, could you show the list of variables and what outsized impact that has on the attendance rate?
Yep. So the variables that we usually look at are special ed, free and reduced, gender, grade point average, and poverty rate, which is free and reduced. So those are the 6 that we look at now. So I can send you that regression as well as the chart.
It seems like there would be a ton of points that we could try to put in there as variables that would show either drastically different. I would suspect the correlation would stay roughly the same, but when we're looking at solutions going to next year and years forward, that data can only get stronger as we continue to compile it. And the more variables we can control for, I don't need to tell you that, then the closer we can try to tailor some of these solutions.
Exactly that. So we're trying to control those variables. We're trying to control each individual variable by a specific intervention targeted towards that variable to kind of control that variable and eliminate them. Sometimes it's hard to say, well, this might affect 2 or 3 of these variables, so you can get really into the weeds with that piece. So we're looking at more broader patterns on that. And we are also at the causality of what students are either self-reporting or what counselors are reporting or parents are reporting as the reasons that they're absent. So yeah, we pull a lot of data. And actually, so our poverty rate is rising, right? But it's probably 65% of free and reduced are chronic kids. So it's not completely our poverty kids that are, we have quote-unquote non-poverty kids that are chronically absent as well. And, so I don't want to paint everybody in the same corner. But that's certainly the strongest correlation piece. So.
This would be a great piece to add into the retreat, so you can look at a little detailed dig in. There's one factor that Dr. Bickwood and I talked about that we haven't been able to isolate right now unless we do a little deeper dig, and that's the single-parent home. In terms of trying to manage when you have nobody else other than you to care for 2 or 3 children going to 3 different schools, it's a challenge. That happens to correlate very often strongly with poverty because you have one member trying to support all children. But I think that's a factor that we do need to think about in terms of who has support to help get their children to school.
That comes up a little bit. You'll see that a little bit in the data where they talk about older siblings at the high school caring for younger siblings. Because we actually, we look at a number of circumstances of a student in high school to see if they had younger siblings in any of our, our elementary or middle schools. And a lot of times they were absent on the same day. So the parent is at work, you can't miss work, and a student, maybe a younger student is sick, so the older student will stay home. So that is definitely related to the single parent issue.
The limits of the data obviously being what we're able to identify and more importantly verify for some of these causes too. What are our steps for maintaining and guaranteeing the integrity of the data?
So the data, the data comes, I pull the data from our student information system, okay? So I have my numbers. The numbers that the state pulls are going to be slightly different in terms of numbers because they pull things and they go through their own kind of formulation. So what we found with things like data reporting errors, and I wouldn't say it's a big, maybe 1% at the most. Things like exam days that we're doing right now. If a student, because the way their schedule lines up, would not have a first block exam or a second block exam, maybe, and that would only happen once if a student had, you know, a special circumstance, or they had a study hall in, let's say, a PE after that, like that. Those students we found out in the past had been reported as being absent, even though they were excused from school that day because they had no exams. So that's like a data reporting error that goes to the state. The state doesn't know that from anything. They just see the raw numbers. So the state, they look at them, they do care about the story behind the numbers, but I think the narrative that we uncover is more important. So we're doing that with the hard numbers, the quantitative numbers, the SIS, and things like EdSite and CERC. But we're also looking at like, what are students self-reporting, where the parents self-reporting, where the parent calls in the morning while their student's out, and things like that. So, and sometimes that comes from meetings and the PPP process.
Just what are the goals for each school for percentage-wise for getting under the truancy? Like, for example, I know another school that's working and they have a 10%. They want all of their kids under 10%. What are you at currently, and what is that goal number?
So I calculated us, and I just did the year-end calculations for us at the high school, and we were 22, and I think last year we were 22.4. So my personal goal at the high school would be 18 for next year, and then to stabilize between 15 and 18, depending on the poverty rate. Obviously, if that rate rises, which we hope it doesn't, we still would like to maintain that 15 to 18%. If the rate drops, then we look to increase our goal, to go lower, to go down to closer to 10%. You saw the numbers the first year where we were at 6.5. You know, those are great numbers. There's also a small anomaly is the state changed how they, about 6 or 7 years ago, they changed a little bit how they reported the absent rates, because they used to pull a number on October 15th, and that's how Connecticut did it. And now they pull a year grad at the end, so you cohort data.
And for any of the other schools, by chance, do you know what your numbers are?
I know that we set our goal each year to reduce it by a certain percentage, and our goal this year, I don't remember the numbers, what we started at, but we wanted to reduce it by 2%, which we met.
Okay. Because I just think it would be great to also communicate that to some of the parents, because in the communication to parents that the school has like a 10% goal, it helps remind you of you're working towards that goal, and it just that communication routinely to home to parents, reminding them is a great way. So.
I have a question, because a lot of parents bring their kids in for a very short period of time in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Do we count that towards our absentees?
So it's different at each school, because at the younger schools, they have the same teacher all day. So I'm not sure how they report. How do you report?
You show up and you're there.
They consider you there for the day, even though the child leaves within 15 minutes of arriving.
It doesn't usually happen like that,
But it does happen, I know. I was just curious.
And at the high school, our periods rotate in the current schedule. So what you'll find is a lot of students will miss that morning block sometimes, but it won't show up because the period rotates, so it'll show up on different blocks because it rotates through the schedule. So if they're coming in tardy or things like that. So what we'll see is, you'll see students with, maybe 28 absences, but 30 tardies, because, then getting to school is the issue for the student, and we know that.
So they don't have to go to if they don't go to the first block, but they go to the second, they're not absent?
So they're marked absent for that first block, If they miss more than half the block, they're absent for that block. If they miss, if they come in for their second block, then they'd be present for the rest of the day.
Okay, so they don't have to, it doesn't have to get to over half the day to be considered present.
Well, we do that for athletic events and dances and things like that, but for reporting as a student, as a president, we mark them down to the time in. So basically, they clock in for the attendance office, and if they would leave early, they would clock out. So Mrs. Norton would have a record of their attendance during that day, the time period of that day.
So as you know, in the packet you received, backing against this and having a meeting with the administration, I put a request through to you for the board to have both the support and the courage to base at the bottom. There is a request for the sanction that says, moderately, we would say if there's 5 unauthorized absent days, they would lose 5 points in the quarter, and it would start fresh every quarter. So if a student is out unauthorized, that means if a parent writes the note, we understand that they have a right to have that absence. If a child is out because they've had a problem, they had suspension, that's not their choice, that doesn't count, nor does it should count at the state, but we don't want to double indemnity a child. That if someone goes to a college visit, you don't count that as an unauthorized. It could even be unexcused, they went there, but as long as they can justify it, that's the administration that would identify these are unauthorized. When you have an unauthorized, don't wait for children to get to the number 5. You tell them you've had an unauthorized day, you're beginning to affect your grade, never more than 5 points. And every quarter they can start to incentivize, now improve it. What we found with the past models, where you got to 10 days, they get to 9, or once they passed 10, they didn't care anymore because it affected the whole year. We're looking at, and if they miss only 8 class, they miss the morning period, and that's the one, it has to affect that class. You can't take a credit off of a child's math class if they attended math or miss. So we're looking for that as part of a comprehensive report system. We want to engage parents and families at defined stages of excessive. So instead of waiting for this to become a crisis, we need to bring them in. We need to have meetings where parents can be told after 2 or 3 days, you need to come in with your child, meet with the counselor, of things such as tardiness as well. Tardiness can be consistent, specifically for a class. When we go to an A-B schedule, A day 1 can always be English. B day 1 can always be math. I don't like math, I'm just going to come in second period on a B day. That needs to be addressed specifically by the class that's missed. That teacher, that child need to know that missing my class is resulting. Not to the point that it will change it from A to B necessarily, but it will affect. We need these so that, and we need regular reports to the board, because we will only change this when we understand it in its entirety. So our request is we'll get to the policy level when we get there in August and September, but we need the high school to know if they can report to the students when you begin the year, this is an approved comprehensive response that the board is undertaking for attendance and truancy. It includes a sanction, it's called 5 points for 5 unauthorized, not unexcused, unauthorized. So the school will have the control to make sure parents can petition or explain why a child, medically they're out. You can't say that you're going to lose credit when medically you can't be there. We should be thinking about how we can offset that or how we can address it. It also has included that if they are out, they have a period of time to make up the work. That's double indemnity. If a child misses a day, you can't say, and you can't take the test. You have to give them a time to come in and take that test. But we need this done so that we can walk into the school year knowing that we're taking a proactive stance up front. We're looking at the data. We did not make a lot of changes after the first year, but we have more knowledge. We're now asking the board, the district, the school, and the staff to say we are aligned. This is something that will be done. This is how we're going to approach it, with both the positive aspect of a team that's going to be reviewing this regularly and reporting to the board, asking for positive support of the police, CHR, different kind of mental health programs, putting in sanctions that say it'll start to show where it's making a difference, so parents will hear that it's making a difference, but you start fresh every quarter. It never holds against you. You can have an A+ that went to an A-, the next year you can have next quarter have an A+, A+. You can actually balance it out across the year. We looked at the most reasonable way to make a sanction that wouldn't be permanent or hurt the child in the long run, but definitely stop the reporting from day 1 to day 2 and not waiting to get an aggregate number of days. That's how we're losing our children. So I am looking to see if you are prepared to authorize the comprehensive response. That will put us on the first step we always can look and see the data and make decisions as we go along.
Do you want a motion to authorize the bullet points at the bottom?
I just need the authorization of the comprehensive response because it's right here in the package, it's as reported.
But this wouldn't be something that the policy subcommittee would look at?
Policy will look at making it a policy that they want to have overarching for all of the controls. This is putting us on a path of the approved process and sanction. That's your action step. We do need a stronger policy than we have, but if we have to wait through 2 meetings, August and September, you would not be able to implement something in the middle of the year of October. You can't change the rules once the students walk in.
So is this something you would want to send home to kids on the first day?
Even before if we can. But if you approve it tonight, I'm sure they will let parents know as of tomorrow, this is the high school. They've asked for this for almost 2 years. They've been saying this is a necessary step.
So I am a little concerned. I have a background in ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. I see the punishment very clearly here. It's outlined, underlined, 5 unauthorized days of absence will result in a 5-point loss. However, when there's punishment, it should also be balanced with an incentive, a reward, some type of reinforcement. Where's that reinforcement?
Well, first, I would not use the word punishment. I would use a consequence for their unauthorized absence. No one is being punished. They're receiving a consequence for not coming to school without a valid reason. The other piece is there's the opportunity to make up any work that's missed. So their grade, as we said, the 5 points, up to 5-point reduction cannot be the sole reason for a student failing a class. If they do not complete work, if they choose to not participate in the class, this is more of a participation type of a grade or reduction because they are choosing not to be in the class at that particular time, or for whatever reason they're not there. They're also not taking advantage of the opportunity to make up any lost work or time. There's the opportunity for an appeal by a parent or student if they feel that this was not a just reason for a point deduction. And so I think that the incentive would be that you're not going to lose points. You can take the days that you need to take off if you're sick, if you're going to a college visit, if you're on a field trip or what have you. However, it's putting the responsibility back on the student and the family to say, there is a consequence for an unauthorized absence. Absolutely not a punishment, a consequence for a missed day or a missed piece of time due to an unauthorized reason.
An authorized reason.
That is recoverable. Yes.
An authorized reason, just like if a parent calling in saying the child's sick, even if that happens too often, in our perspective, that's still an authorized reason, right?
Well, we know that sometimes, especially when the flu was running rampant.
Yeah, 4 or 5 days.
A parent is not going to take their child to the doctor every time they want to keep them home. If
That's what I'm saying, it doesn't require a note.
So that's why we've got to be able to work with parents and say, hey, here's a pattern of behavior. Your child was sent home on Tuesday with a fever and the flu. They missed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Those are authorized absences because of that condition or that illness. And we will take every opportunity to make that tracker whole as far as work and time and not lose those points as far as the deduction. It also requires that the teacher provides really provides an opportunity for that student to make up the work in a timely manner. And we will work with that student. We've also got pieces such as the Student Learning Center, so that if a student is out and they've missed much time, we can then work through some periods during the day with the student in the Learning Center to try and make up some work.
Who makes up this attendance committee?
Well, it would be faculty members and an administrator. Would not be the principal right off the bat, because then if the parent needed to appeal from the appeals process, there's got to be someone in the building that they would need to go to. So an assistant principal, guidance counselors, faculty members. I mean, when we did have the attendance policy in the past, we did have an appeals team, appeals committee. And Joyce, I'm not sure whether you recall, but I know that there were teachers on the committee, there were administrators on the committee, and it was a balance committee to take a look at
For
that.
privacy, it cannot have a parent. Because
Pardon?
for privacy, it cannot have a
Correct.
parent. It has to be school officials.
No, but the committee itself, this is with the parent of the child, can't have a parent or something.
Right. They can't discuss the child.
Right.
So where is that appeal process detailed for the parents and the students going into the school?
We don't have it detailed at this point. That would be something that I believe that as the policy committee took a look at things, that they would identify, exactly what the policy committee felt we should have as a representative committee for parents. But I know it would be inclusive of teachers and administrators.
But just sending this letter home, the
Pardon
policy
me?
says that there's a chance for appeal, so if we sent this home over the summer before the policy committee was able to meet, the parent could still see the consequences and the appeal, that there is a chance for appeal, so we're not really.
We're not locking us up, but we
Right,
are
that's-
giving them the right to move forward.
That's what I'm saying, that's offensive, right? We're not really locking ourselves into this necessarily.
And is the participation part of the grading? It says absences will not be the only reason for course failure. The combination of student work, participation, and level of mastery.
Mhm.
I just worry that it needs to be defined of the participation aspect. I mean,
Well, we've got some courses where teachers that do have a heavy participation grade. And if a student is absent, they can't receive a 0 for participation as far as that goes. If it's an unauthorized absence, they're out. If they're absent and they do not take the opportunity to make up work or such, then you would be able to apply a deduction because they're now choosing not to participate in that activity or that classwork that they needed to make up. It's designed to provide the student the opportunity to recoup that classwork, that participation work, and it's.
It also gives the student ownership.
Pardon me?
It's also gives the student ownership of that.
Correct.
They could fix the situation.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think the ownership is the part of it.
Okay, so, well, what is the wording of the motion?
No.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to authorize a comprehensive response to attendance at truancy at Plainfield High School as outlined in this written package.
And I'll second it.
okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
I'm a nay. I just want to see more on the incentive first before I would vote. So, nays?
Nay.
Okay, so motion passes. All right, moving on. Food Services Management Amendment. Mr. Lucier?
Thank you, Mrs. Haskell. Every year, the board is asked to approve the following year's amendment to the contract, allowing the food service management company to operate for the next year. The original agreement is always developed in such a way that the contract is for 1 year, and they're given 4 amendments. I'm sorry. They're given, yes, 4 amendments for 4 more years, to give a total of 5 years. So here we are asking for Amendment 3, which will be year 4. So I'm looking for your approval and move forward with our food service company.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the amendment for the food services contract.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to paraeducator contract ratification. Mr. Demeter.
The request before you is to ratify a 1-year extension of the paraeducator contract as is with terms and conditions with only a 2% or with a limit of the 2% wage increase. This is something, as I explained in my letter, was something that was looked at by the board in terms of trying to get past these fiscal years that we have and get into a full good faith bargaining without some of the interruptions that we've had, such as ECS reductions, MBR requirements, and they were willing to accept a one-year extension with no changes other than that one increase to wage.
But what's the increased wage in the current contract?
So the wage would be that they would take the current rate of pay, if it is $20 an hour, that they make at the top step, it would be a 2% raise, and they would get $20.40 an hour, and that would be the only thing. The contract
No,
is...
so in the current contract that we're extending, there are yearly increases 2%.
No, yeah, it wouldn't be only for that 1 year. That's all they would get is a 2% increase.
But what is the current contract say? The contract are usually written with a percentage increase every year.
What was that?
But they're done. Oh, there is
What is
no...
it? They had a 5-year contract or something,
Yep.
right? What was the percentage increase every year? Is it 2%?
It's approximately 2. I don't have that. I only have the current...
That's what I want to know, because I don't know, I mean, if it's only 1.5%, then we're giving them more than was in the contract. I think we should give them what was in the, because we're extending the contract for a year, so we should give them the raise that is in the contract. So I'd like to know what the percentage is in the contract.
I don't have that. I believe it's 2 or higher.
I mean, 2 is usually, I mean, I know 2 and 3 is the going rate, usually.
Correct. This is a 3-year-old contract, and
Okay.
I didn't look at what the third year was of it.
Specifically, the 1-year extension would entail a 2% increase.
That's what it would be.
Okay.
It's only a single
Okay.
1 year.
Okay. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the requested 1-year extension to their present contract with a 2% wage increase.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. School start times. Mr. DePietro.
If you followed the information, I know that you granted GATCO a 1-year extension of the contract. They were to look at how they could yield 100%, $100,000 reduction to cost. One bus in the regular runs of general students is approximately $54,000 per year. To do $100,000, it would take 2 buses reduction. We can do that, as I gave you the numbers that we have in each of the tiers. If you look at it, if you have approximately 800 students running in the elementary run, we could put them in a number of 40 to 45 students on a bus. The reason we don't is because we have such a tight run between the middle and the elementary school. You can see the runs as they are right now. The high school starts at 7:20. The recommendation is move it back 5 minutes to 7:15. The buses approximately still arrive at the same time. They usually come by about 7 o'clock, so they would still be in advance. But it does make an adjustment. The middle school stays the same. That gives you 5 more minutes between being at the high school and getting to the middle. And then because the middle school, we need to move that elementary run by 15 minutes. It would start at 9:15. You can see that it gives you 55, actually a little more than an hour from 8:10 to 9:15. But remember, they're going to drop off the students, clear the middle school, and then go pick up the children and bring them. So the children will only be on the run for 40 to 45 minutes max. We would never exceed that run, but it gives them the chance to pick up the students on a more equalized base. We have a guarantee from DATCO that we can do this with 18 buses. It will save 180. Concurrent to this, without changing our runs, we have now engaged Thompson, Killingly, Brooklyn just came along, and Sterling want to talk to us about out-of-district runs that we can consolidate. We believe we can possibly reduce at least 2 bus runs or have those costs offset. We could be looking at more than 100,000. But this was what was necessary for us to try to finalize how DATCO could work with us, show us the runs, show us the legitimacy. We have some buses, as you know, we've seen buses with 12 to 18 students on it. But in order to equalize that, because they have a little longer run, you may be able to put 3 or 4 more students on that run. And so if you take 4 off of 20 runs, that's 80 students, that's 2 buses. So it's really a matter of only putting 3 or 4 more on a run, But the issue is when you're traveling a longer distance, you might need that extra 10 minutes. And that's what the reason is, to adjust our start times strictly for the purposes of trying to economize our runs, save the money. We still are pending that there is an ECS reduction. How are we addressing that? We're trying to address all the things that were promised. And DATCO has flattened their rates. There's no increase at all in cost. And they're willing to modify this, and they are working with this. There's a meeting tomorrow. Where's my, Mr. Sugarman, right here? There's a meeting tomorrow beginning that conversation about also consolidating the special ed runs without loss to us, just bringing 1 or 2 other children on the run.
So, they're keeping the cost the same as last year. What's
The rate.
Okay, that's,
So-
okay, that's.
Right, so if the run is 54,000 for the year, it'll still be that rate. They're not going up 2.5% like they did each year, they flat. But now we want to save 2 runs every day.
In addition to the flat rate.
Absolutely.
Say,
Yep. So there's no increase because there's no rate change, and there would be a reduction of 2 buses, and hopefully a reduction of 2 special ed buses that went from originally 7, we're up to 11 for special ed.
this here is just for the in-house ones, not.
These are just the in-house 20 buses.
How long does an elementary school student on average spend on the bus?
Anywhere from about 25 to 40 minutes, because you know the run that's closest to the school goes furthest away. Whenever a run goes over 45 minutes, which is the limit we set, we then ask for an adjustment to the runs so that they can bring it under.
How quickly do you get that data? Or how quickly do you get that data, or do you hear from the parent in that case?
Oh, we get What would you say? Do we hear from parents?
Well, I mean, like, I would assume that if there is data being submitted on whatever interval, that you could probably see something trending longer.
We do.
for
And
bus
quite
rides.
honestly, I want you to know 2 pieces. One is, I think even the parents here will tell you, the first 3 weeks we tell them, you gotta work with us. I mean, we know everybody's new. But the second thing is we actually have GPS on every single bus, and we can call for it daily, because GPS tells you how long that bus runs from the time it leaves PCS to the time it gets to Shepherd Hill, from Shepherd Hill to the last bus clearing it home. And they have to call in for the first 2 weeks to make sure they're under run.
All that data is stored somewhere for you guys to look at?
We have it.
You
We
have
pretty
it?
much
Yeah,
have it.
okay.
Now, would we be projecting this 108,000 as savings that we would realize at the end of the year?
Yeah, 108 is for the total for the year. We'll know daily if there's 2 less buses, you'll see 54, you'll see $350 a day.
Yes.
$350 a day will be reduced from the bill in the first month you'll see it.
All right, because I'm viewing that number in the context of that final number out of Hartford for the ECS funding. That seems to fit rather well into that shortfall.
I did, but we did account for savings in transportation.
Oh.
We did.
Our budget already has
Oh,
that in there?
you approved it back in April that we gave DACO the thing, I had a
But we
copy.
didn't give them the authorization for $108,000 saved, so we could save more money than we approved?
Well, you approved them to be flat
Yeah.
with the commitment that DACO would work with us to get the 100. It happens to be 54, so it's 108, and we may be able to do something with special ed. So there could be the offset that you're talking about if we do get hit with the extra money, and they say we want a further reduction. That would help towards it. Without it, we're gonna be in trouble.
So, right, so this $108,000 is already.
Was accounted.
Was already accounted for.
Right. We're now
Okay.
looking at a new special ed
Gotcha.
reduction as well.
If we're concerned about the single moms and the poverty level,
Yep.
we have the elementary kids getting on the bus at 9:15, and I'm assuming mom has to be home at 9:15, put the kid on the bus. The high school kid, he's on the bus at 7:15, so mom's, he doesn't need mom home, or dad, I'm kind of, So why are we starting the elementary school so late? Because, the parent can't leave for work until the kid gets on the bus.
True, but please remember that they're already coming in at 9. We're not asking for 2.5 hours, we're asking for 15 minutes.
Well, no, but I mean, why, it just seems like it should be,
We need-
high school kids want to sleep in anyways, I mean,
We need 3 tiers because there are 650 students at the high school. There are 800 children at the middle PCS, and there are 800 at the elementary. You only have 20 buses, so you have to have 3 tiers. It takes 45 minutes minimally between tiers. Once the high school drops off at 7 o'clock, it needs to go pick up all the children and then bring them to the middle school.
Why can't we switch it?
Well,
I would think parents, elementary school parents would appreciate not having to wait to go to work or, put them in daycare so they can put them on the bus.
He said, why don't the little kids start
I mean,
at
I'm just
7:15?
I'm not, I mean, it's been a long time since I've had kids
Right.
at it.
So you
And
realize
high
the
school
chip,
starting earlier too, it's also designed with sports and everything, if you think about the sports teams getting out.
That's actually what I was thinking.
Yeah. And not only that, if the parent had to put them on the bus earlier, they still have to get out of work earlier.
Fair point.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could start them earlier, the parents still gonna have to be home earlier, or you can
Well,
start them
I-
later.
if they work 9 to 5, they're in daycare after school anyways. I'm just, you know, what I mean, so it's,
but that means they're on the bus at 8:30. The children are not coming on the bus at 9:15. And I talked to Myra, and she said that she believes, because we have a morning at-school program, so we have the before-school program, and we have them at Shepherd Hill, and we have them at Moosup. That's the only two schools. That means children can come early as 7:30 in the morning, and they can stay there in the same school, and then just come into the school. So we already have a program run by our school department that has an early start for parents who need the extra time.
And also for the sports program, you're gonna want, and especially in the fall, you're gonna want them to get their sport activity done, especially if it's outside, before it gets dark.
they're done at 1, before 2 o'clock.
Okay, so the Shepherd Hill is.
I'm worried about the kids having, we have morning before school program, and they can drop them off. Sure come they can.
You know, as the elementary principals, I mean, you know, these little kids, how are they at 3:45 in the afternoon? Are they tired? I mean, is there something that's,
Well, the younger ones are more tired, but they're looking at an adjustment of only 15 minutes. I don't think that's a big matter, a big effect on us.
It's around the state. I mean, all of the high schools going early.
oh, they are,
Yeah, it's not-
all right.
But what about, how long are the elementary kids on the bus? Because if they're getting out at 3:45, when you're getting into January and February, it's getting dark at 4 o'clock. Are most of these students home already?
Right, if you remember though, the board also made a contract so that at least 2 days, we're gonna have an extended time of 25 minutes later. We're now looking at hopefully the elementary schools will run that before school, so they won't be out later. I mean, the board knows that they're looking to have more time for children to have extra support. So even a middle school student, if they're coming at Memorial School, they normally get out at 10 up to 3, they would be getting out at 3:30 now, because we're giving them more time to support. I think that the change of 15 minutes is not significant, and it may help some parents who in the afternoon might like to have that little extra time. And in the morning, we have a coordinated program offered by the school department in terms of at the schools where it's the latest time, we open those doors as early as 7 o'clock in the morning. For parents who need the extra help, 100% of the parents don't need the extra help, we know that, but for those who do want it, they can be right on the site, not at a daycare. They'll go to Shepherd Hill and wait, and then just walk into their class, and we'll have that earlier in the morning for them. So that currently exists. I don't know if the demand will exceed our ability to meet the parents, but we know we have a program for them. I don't know any other way to reduce the buses unless you have the ridership available, and you can't get the ridership unless you have the time to pick up the children. So, I don't know.
What's the board recommendation through the, can you motion to adjust the start time?
Sure, I would have to inform parents if you approve it. If you don't, then I have to go to another plan.
I'll make a motion to adjust the start times as listed on this document in the package.
And I'll second it.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed, nay.
Opposed.
Any abstentions?
I will abstain.
That's fine.
It's a split.
I don't know.
So,
How many ayes
I'm
did we get?
sorry. I, 1, 2, 3. I,
3 ayes?
4, and nays. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm the deciding vote. I'm going to say that I'll vote yay, because at this point, I think it's the only plan that we have that's viable. So motion passes. All right, team approvals, Mrs. Cadro?
So we have two teachers from Shepherd Hill that are interested in becoming team mentors, and they need board approval to go through training. Gemma Rose and Carrie Gervasio. The training is a wonderful training, and gives teachers a lot of information and strategies to help other teachers, as well as implementing strategies in their classrooms. So I think it's a great opportunity. They're going to have the training at Eastern Connecticut College after school gets out on their own time, and it's free. So they need to get it.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve Carrie Gervasio and Jennifer LaRose as team approvals.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. FRC grant approval.
This grant we've had for about 30 years. It was started in Plainfield when the grant was first offered. I wrote it, and it's $100,000. We provide many services for the community. And just need approval to write the grant.
All right, so I'm looking for approval to go forward with this FRC grant.
I move to accept it.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, so in your binder or your folder, there is the superintendent's evaluation. If you would be so kind as to fill out the evaluation. Does that work? That gives you about a month? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Very good discussion.
She was admiring you, but you're...
It's because I wasn't looking at.
So, Mr. O'Donnell asked me a little bit about the weekend, and I wanted to share with you, these are guides that we made up in my office, and I have some to share with you for K through 5, and then I also have the program of studies that I made up for the middle school. So I'm just going to take a few of them. I don't have the all in every grade, but if you have a particular grade that you're interested in, they are also all online on our website. So I think they came out very nice. And these are basically for parents, and we will be providing them at the open houses for parents in the fall. They'll have copies so every parent can get it for their student, for their grade. So just take what you would like, and let me start some on the other end.
Can I ask a question? Sure. So Shepherd Hill and Moosup, they have the same curriculum?
Yes.
Yeah, this is.
So those are curriculum by grade, each will be in a different grade.
I think I read it too.
And I think that-
Are they in high school?
I think they can.
Yeah.
So we did it right now. Yeah.
Are they in high school? Third grade already? In like 3 years.
Like I said, we are online, and if you want another hard copy, you can get it right online. Any questions?
Again, another piece for your retreat, just to have these and look at it, see the quality. It's just nice to see that they're done with a lot of color and reflection on the expectations.
Take a look at it.
I have no questions.
Can you send me over a middle school
It is right online.
Oh,
I
okay.
am middle school, I like, have the issue.
We don't have them, we have grade three and.
And just a reminder, these are all online now?
Oh, yeah, they've been online
Oh,
for
okay.
several months.
Well, here, you can have the paper copies then, because I'll read them on my phone. Then that is save those. So that's kindergarten and third.
Anybody want kindergarten?
I could use kindergarten.
You want to start?
Yeah, you want.
Does anybody
Okay,
go first?
fourth grade.
You get prepared.
Down there for the board.
Oh, I got the first page.
Here's fourth and fifth. Who wanted fourth and fifth? Did you want
I
fourth
did.
and fifth? Or-
Thank you.
Okay. All right, enjoy.
Thank you.
Have a read.
All right. Superintendent's end of the year report.
So, as we're ending tonight, and it's been a long night, and there's been a lot of, actually, you will see the impact of some of the very big decisions you had to make. Sorry it's the end of the year, this has been a very long, difficult year. This is a great way to end, because we're going to begin to look at just what has happened. So, a few years back, at one of the retreats, this is what the board decided. In a simplistic statement, why are we here? We're here to prepare all students. Capital, because every child is trusted to our care, lead a safe and healthy lives. And we need to do that in two ways. One, they need to have the skills to walk out to be productive members of the community and the workforce. But that means they need the skills on both ends of being personally safe, but also personally being personally productive. So, in terms of this, we did a visual response that what came back to us from the public. They said we had meetings with every PTO, we had forums, people came, a lot of the board members would sit and listen. We had paper on the wall, we also did it here 2 years ago, and then we aggregated what do those individual items look like, and we found that there are basically 6 big ideas. That a school that has rigorous standards, a school district with rigorous standards, with the highest quality of staff, very responsive to the diversity of the learners coming to us, support for the families in the community to engage them, not just to talk to them, but to engage them, to create safe and healthy environments for learning, and to optimize the resources, because we're living in a time where there are limited resources, constantly people attacking and challenging the tax base to do everything. These are the 6 goals. Under those 6 goals, what has happened is we've listed the sub-activities. The past 7 years, basically, I think you can see that if you look at the goals we've had, what have we accomplished? And during your retreat, you'll see all of the things that have happened, just from new roofs and new playgrounds, but also new curriculum, remapping to the state. Those are things that we systematically put together. The fact that we have new websites, the fact that we have changed over to LED lighting, these are all inside your plan if you remember. This has been the project and the goals that we've been working towards. 2020 is coming to an end next year. We need a new 5-year plan that says where will we go from here. That HVAC system wasn't realized, but LED and solar was. But here's the issue. In 17, 18, 18, 19, we faced something we did not have in our plan. We didn't know the state was going to kill us with cuts to ECS to the tune of $750,000. Then they gave us back $550,000 of it, but then they asked the town to put that $500,000 on top of the original number, forgetting that they're the ones who cut us. And that's what we did this year, is try to come up with $1 million without hurting the taxpayers by saying, give it to us in June, we won't spend it, and next year, give us the money we need, and we'll settle both problems, which is what we did. So, in addition, the 2018-19, we had a PMS fire. Now, I'm surprised that Natasha still has hair, and it's still blonde, God bless her. Yeah. But we had an MBR threat. We've spent more time this year in meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to correct the threats to what we had to do. And then we added some things that were not on our list. Well, here's what did happen though, because we have been following a strategic plan. There is evidence that a strong plan supported by a strong board will achieve the goals and targets. So this is the big picture. This is what you listed. This is what the parents said to us. More technology, provide all-day kindergarten, increase career and college readiness. This is what they told us to do 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and currently. And then each year you can't do all of this, so you pick some of the items. And in August we met with you and said, here are the things we're going to try to do. We're going to try to do some work with technology and textbook projects. We're going to do some work with career and work-life experience and vocational. We're going to look at Google Classroom. We're going to increase more of our early college experiences. This is what we're going to do. And we gave that to you in August. Normally in January, I give you a midterm report, overwhelmed, and then here's the end of the year. And these are the things that we in fact can report and say, these are the things that we have accomplished. We did have science, math, and social studies. Those texts were piloted. The science, however, at PMS, they like it. The problem is it takes K4 alignment to the 5-6. You can't just do a mid-grade 4-5 science because there's precursor work. So while it had some merit, we're not ready to move forward with that pilot. But math is actually in place, right, Mrs. Cadro? The math has actually been implemented, so that one's here. And social studies was, I believe, just completed. So it was just done. That's for board decision. Board always approves the text. They approve the curriculum change. As you know, we have a committee, that subcommittee of the board to do that. We did set up Google Drives to set up some communication between MES and SHE, if I'm correct. So we actually are doing some dialogue, text dialogue, and conversational stuff. So we did a little bit in that area. We have some new PHS courses, one that is already aligned to a college, but we have ECE, early college experiences in history, social studies, writing, biology, and some others. But I tried to get them on one line and show these are things, some of them pre-existed, some of them new, and I knew we have a teacher fully trained to give college credit when they take it, and that's initiated. So these are exciting things that in a year, without money, with aggravation, we're trying to convince everybody and every legislator to give us back our money, we were still able to do this. We also drafted a differentiated high school diploma PHS that is under review. It'll come to you because we have a year to keep working on this, but you will see they're looking at a diploma that can actually add distinction so that a child who has to make 26 credits over 4 years, if they go beyond 26 to 27 or 32, and they can get awards of certain values, like no less than maybe whatever that is, 85, in these courses, and they do a targeted group, such as STEM, they can maybe get a distinction. So they'll get a high school diploma with noted distinction in STEM because they were able. We need incentives for kids to want to come here and say, not only did I go to Plainfield High School, not only did I get a diploma, but I got distinction for this category. I'm going in this field. That would be a nice thing to do. But we're not prepared. We're just working on that. We have a committee that came up with it. We have some interim assessments that we did at the T-Val. You go to the big picture of number 2, you can read that later. Here's what we said we'd do. We said we'd look at textbook. I told you about the ones that, where the alignment K-5 had to be delayed. We did implement Makerspace at Shepherd Hill to match the one at MES because we had it in one school, not for all children. So we did balance that technology and collaboration with MES and Shepherd Hill.